Let's get this going. Cool, so welcome everyone to ReactJS React Denver. We're actually renaming from ReactJS Denver to React Denver, just a little bit less to say, so I'm still getting used to that. Tonight we've got food, drink, and relief. So please, at any time, get up and grab something to eat, grab something to drink. We're not going to stop for anything, so if anything, just as long as you don't walk through here, just walk around to get food and drink. Between talks, there'll be a brief intermission, so you can always grab something or step out and come back. We have some great sponsors tonight. Turing mentioned they are happy to host this meetup, and they want to host more meetups. So if you know of any meetups that are looking for space, they're really happy to help support the community. So we're really happy to be here. This is an awesome space. They're also a great school. Granicus hosts our meetup.com fees. And we have a new sponsor this month, Apex Systems, who I'll introduce in a moment. Thank you very much, Apex Systems, for sponsoring tonight's meetup. Thank you. So with that, let's kick off hiring. Michaela and Alex, what do you guys have going on?
Yeah, thanks for letting us be part of this. So I know we put a few roles up there. We actually have probably over like 30 different openings right now. We do a lot of contract and project hire work, but we also have some full-time positions. So we've got a lot of React roles, and then also just full stack, mobile, UX, backend, data spots too. So if you're interested in anything, just email us directly.
Thank you for sponsoring. Who else? Shermeen?
Hi, I'm Shermeen. I work for K1, and we have portfolios across the US, and the two here in Denver are Peak and eBolder, which you guys may be familiar with. All our roles are full-time positions, not contract. For Crown Peak right now, we have a junior QA, a junior developer, a senior .NET developer, and a senior Java developer that we're looking for, and then a senior systems engineer for eBolder. And we have openings all the time, so if anyone's interested, then email us on eBolder.
Thank you, Shermeen. Who else?
Yeah, I work for Bport. We're looking for front-end and back-end engineers, full-time. Various questions, hit me up. I think it's on our site too if you want to sign up. But, yeah.
What's your name?
Alex.
Alex, thank you, Alex.
Yeah.
Is your contact info on board?
Oh, no, I can put it up.
Cool.
Yeah.
Who else?
Did you folder?
That was Beatport.
Oh, Beatport. Yeah, it's like an online music site.
Yeah, I've gotten some tracks there.
Sweet.
Who else? All right, cool. So tonight we're talking, all the talks are coming from you. I'm really happy to have 11 great speakers tonight. Can I do a quick roll call to make sure everybody's here? I know Alan's here, Doug's here, Sarah?
Okay.
Sarah? Sam? Not you. Okay, we're missing Sam. Duke?
Yeah.
All right, Margaret? Okay, might be missing Margaret. Anastasia? Okay. Michael? Danny? I know David's here, and Chris. Awesome. Okay, I'll update that in a little bit. We're going to try to stick to about 5 minutes per talk. We'll give you like a 1-minute grace, so we'll try to be quick, and then hand off and get through a lot of great learning tonight. So I'm very excited to see what we have. And afterwards, we're going to head over to the Develop Happy Hour at Public School 303. It's on 16th, kind of on the other side of Union Station, just across Wayzata. So it's almost to where the trains are. So we'll head over there about 5 minutes after we wrap our last talk. So with that, let me get Alan up here. Woo.
So fancy now with our microphones.
Oh, does anybody need anything other than USB-C for video? I'm guessing somebody will. So I've got a USB-C adapter. Does anybody have like the other adapter that we need?
I have USB-C to HDMI.
I have USB-C to HDMI.
That's what I have. I have the USB-C.
That's what you have.
Does anybody need anything other than USB-C out for presenting? Do we all have USB-C now?
That's an HDMI, right?
Oh, so if everybody probably needs HDMI then, because they have pros. If anybody's got an Air, we might have problems, so talk to me if you do.
I have HDMI. I don't think I have USB-C.
Okay, I think we're good.
Hello.
Is that too loud? I can't.
Just say first, that's trash on that side,
Okay.
and that's recycling.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Legislation. Thank you. Yeah.
Cool. Definitely gonna knock that over.
Sam?
Okay.
Gotcha.
Wait for it. I'm gonna time myself just to make sure I'm being honest. Hey everybody, how's it going? While I'm getting my timer together, this is me on several places. I posted my slides here along with some other links. You can find it there if you want to follow along, you know, the bouncing bubble over the words. Okay, cool. So just snapshot test is what I'll be talking about very, very quickly. So the specific context tonight is styled components, but you can take a lot of these concepts and apply it to any kind of components that you're using. So the problem. So the React ecosystem has a lot of great testing utilities, and probably the most predominant ones that you'll interact with are expect and enzyme. And while these are really great for testing component functionality, they have trouble getting down to the style level. So on the left here, which is way too small, we have our styled component, which is just a basic button, right? It's a logicless component, but it has a background color and a color, and we want it to be able to like render that consistently every time. And if you work on a team, or you work or if you work with a lot of people, you want to also make sure that your styles stay consistent, because CSS very quickly gets out of hand. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. So it's terrible. So so we have this expect enzyme test on the other hand here, and so we're saying like we are rendering a shallow button, and we expect this wrapper to be a HTML button element. Well, that's garbage. We know it's a button. That's not what we're trying to validate. But that's about as deep as expect an enzyme can go. So snapshots. Snapshots are a really great utility specifically for this purpose. You can't use them for everything, like don't use them for business logic, but this specific thing is super handy. So we have our same button on the left, and on the right we have our, we're now creating a rendering tree, which is essentially like the first time you run your test, it'll make a rendered tree image copy of your component and save that in a local file. And the next time you run your test, it'll essentially do like a diff and compare the two. So that if somebody unexpectedly changes a style on you, like if somebody wants to start going with like border radius 4 instead of border radius 2 because they're a monster, that like you will catch that. The test will catch that. Okay, live example, because what's life without a little danger? Okay, so here's our component here. So same sort of thing as a button, right?
You
we
maximize
have,
that a little bit.
you want it bigger?
Yeah, please.
Cool. Bigger. Okay, so we have this button here. And it's a little more complex than the button that I showed you earlier, but same sort of thing, right? Just a few more styles. Our team also developed a library called Styled Components Modifiers, which allows us to alter styles predictably. So this is what these are. These are little functions that help us alter styles within the same button. So cool. We have our button here. Button has an icon. It also has some text that we have styles for. Let's look at a test. Cool. So just like what we saw before, we have our button, the text, and the icon, and we just want to make sure that it's rendering properly. We also have our 3 tests to make sure each modifier renders as expected. So we're covering all that. Okay, so let's run this thing. See what it does. I did everything. Cool, so we're going to run our test. This is the first time we're running our tests. And we'll see that 7 snapshots for 2 test suites were created. So now, if we hop back in here, we'll see there's this new snapshots directory. And right there, this is what a snapshot looks like. Ooh, nothing fancy. But yeah, so this is what it compares it to. So let's say we have this button text, or like let's say we want to change the color for the button from black to white. We are going to run our test again. And we're going to get this sweet failure that told us, hey, I was expecting a black color, you gave me white. What's the deal? Of course, sometimes styles don't change unexpectedly. Sometimes we want style updates. And if we want to rerun those, we can just do just update snapshot. And this is going to rewrite our snapshots, and then we can run our test again, and they all pass. Cool. Yeah. All right, so other helpful things that work with this, holy cow, okay, is one of the really, really helpful things that you can use alongside this. You see all this test coverage here. Oh, look, I'm actually testing everything. I wasn't supposed to test everything right away. Let's kill that. Let's run the test again. You'll see I commented out 2 tests, and Jest is also saying like, hey, you have these 2 obsolete snapshots. Are you sure you want to keep those? Like, you can get rid of those now if you want. But with this Jest test coverage that comes built in with Jest, we can see that our icon is not covered as well as it should be. And with a little review script that I wrote, this will run through my linter and my styles, like for everything, and then it'll throw this up, and then I can see very easily that like, hey, my button, this icon is not covered, and here's where it's not covered, which is super, super handy. Let me make that bigger, because that's so small. Okay, so now we know that my 2 modifiers aren't covered. We can add these tests back, run it again, run review. Whoops, broke everything. That's cool. That's why I do it live. Okay, so, and now we see that everything's covered at 100%, which is amazing. And scene. Yay! There are a couple other things that I didn't get to if you want to look at the slides on the last one here. Some handy tips there too.
Awesome. Great job, Alan.
Thanks.
Good. Doug, are you good to go? I'll wait till the end, and then I'll ask. Should put question marks next to the names. Instead of horses. You're gone. You weren't here at the beginning. So if you're a speaker and I crossed your name off because you showed up late, because some people did roll in late, we'll add you back at the end. Or I'm just trying to get this closed. Oh, good luck with that. It's so hard. There we go.
Thank you.
Hey guys, my name is Doug Whitney, and I am a software developer for a company called Wireless Registry, and I've been a front-end developer for just over 10 years and really enjoy working at SaaS startups, and I've also had some experience working on distributed teams. I'm calling this talk Have an Opinion or Don't, and to me this is about just the importance of having an opinion in software development, and something that took me a long time to really get my head around. And it's really my thoughts around this phrase, which again took me a long time to really kind of internalize and decide what this meant to me. And what I've kind of arrived at is that, as developers, it's important that you have an opinion for many reasons, right? I mean, not just so that you can kind of like put your ideas out there and see how they stand up to scrutiny and to the real world, right? But just giving yourself kind of a path forward. I think one of the things that I've seen in working on larger teams and working with people who are either junior developers looking to level up or whatever your current role is and trying to advance, one of the things that I think is kind of elusive is that idea of like having an opinion, whether or not you feel strongly about it or you maybe are not as informed as you would like to be. It's important that you have an opinion, or on the flip side that you feel comfortable just saying I don't know, right? I think that's a really powerful idea. So this is my made-up survey of people who have an opinion or not, and I think in my mind this is like where people fall. I think most people, if you ask them about a given topic, maybe they have an opinion, maybe they don't. It's difficult to sometimes take a stand because you're kind of exposing your position, and sometimes that's uncomfortable because you don't know if you really thought it through well, or if someone is going to tell you that what you're thinking is stupid. I mean, that happens, right? But I think if you're in a position where you don't feel like you have an opinion, it's really important that you feel like you can say I don't know, because right, I mean that's one of the quickest ways to learn, especially on a team, is just kind of drawing on the experience and the knowledge of your teammates. And if you don't feel comfortable saying this, I mean, there might be a number of reasons. Maybe you're overly concerned about how you're being perceived by your teammates, or maybe you just kind of work with people who aren't, thoughtful about this idea that when you are a junior developer or someone who is trying to break into development, that it can be really intimidating to just raise your hand and say I don't know. I mean, I think we all probably have the experience where you do that and kind of get shot down by somebody, and that is really just a frustrating experience, So I think raising this question, it can be uncomfortable, but the outcome should always be positive, hopefully. And just on the idea, of having an opinion, I think what is important about that is that people who have an opinion, right, drive the conversation, whether or not they're correct. But the perception is that those people have some additional knowledge that other people don't because they speak out. Again, doesn't necessarily mean that the loudest voice is the correct one, but a lot of times that's the perception. I like this idea too. This comes from a guy who writes a lot about UX, but I think it kind of applies here. This idea of hunkering and disorientation. I like it because the words are memorable, and for me it kind of paints a graphic picture, right? And the idea is that in any kind of creative pursuit or anything where you're creating something, you have an idea in your head, and you have to kind of reconcile that with reality, right? And let's say you're a sculptor. This is one of the examples that he talks about. You have to physically, mold your material and see what it's actually going to do in reality, because your mental model is never going to project perfectly into the real world. And I think that maps well to what we do in software as well, in the sense that a lot of what we're doing is trying to close the gaps in our mental models of how your favorite language works or how the browser engine works, and really kind of bring our understanding closer to the actual way that our tools work. And in the same sense, I think you have to, if you want to see if your ideas hold up, you have to get them out into the world. Challenge yourself, expose yourself to other people's ideas, and really see how that plays out. I think it's important too to, not to mind people who are very dogmatic in their approach, right? Like, I did it this way once, this is the one true way, There's so many valid paths to take. That's why I feel it's really important to expose yourself not only to other people's opinions, but really see where you stand and just take a stand, Maybe you're wrong, give someone the opportunity to correct you. But if you never let anybody know what your opinion is, no one's going to take the time to set you straight or to share their thoughts as well. That is all I have. I'm going to be back next month talking about React and Mapbox and DeckGL.
Sarah.
Okay, does that work? Can you guys hear me? It doesn't sound like anything's happening.
So you got it closer.
Yeah, you moved higher.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay,
A little bit better.
yeah? I can just talk really loudly too.
It picks up just a little bit, makes all the difference.
Yeah, that's true. All right, cool. Well, this is very small. How do I make it bigger?
Nice.
Okay, cool. I don't get to see my notes though. How do I get to see my notes? No. Sorry, everyone.
Should be in your display settings.
There you go.
Okay. So, let me start at the beginning, because that would make more sense. Okay, so my name's Sarah. I work for Formidable Labs. I'm a junior developer there. We're based in Seattle, but there's two of us here in Denver working together. And all of our projects are in React, so this isn't specifically about React, but our current project that we're working on is a project with Electron, and so I had never done it before this project, so I wanted to just learn a little more. So what it is, it's an open source framework that was developed initially in 2013 as Atom Shell. So it started out as just Atom, and then it became its own app, or like own thing. And so I just put a couple examples. There's like thousands and thousands of apps made with Electron, but the GitHub Desktop, Skype, Slack, and obviously Atom are like some of the ones that everyone probably knows. And it's really rather new. It only was supported with the Windows Store and the Mac Store in like 2016. So rather new for Electron apps to be supported. So how it works, basically, I'm gonna go back to this one. With Electron, it's essentially a wrapper for like a browser app if you want to have it as like a desktop app. So one other project that I didn't work on but I was a part of was like a browser site, but then we would wrap it in Electron and make it an app for the desktop so that you could access it without being in a browser. So the entry point is a JavaScript script. So instead of providing a URL directly, you manually create a browser window, load in your HTML file, and then Electron works kind of like the Node.js runtime to load it into the window. I feel like I'm not making much sense. That's
That makes
okay.
perfect sense.
So how does it work? So basically, Node.js runtime is the back end, and then only the rendering library of Chromium is what they use for the front end. So essentially, there's not a lot of difference. Like there's not a lot you have to do to add to your project to make it an Electron app. You have a main.js file, as well as a package.json. And what happens is in the main file, the main file will create the application windows, and then those windows will have like your rendered web pages in them. And so the main process instantiates a window with a web page where your actual web page will then load. So it's kind of like a double layer of the wrapper, I guess you could say. And each browser window runs its own renderer process, and the process will take then a web page and render it in the window. So I just put like a simple mock-up of what like your basic file structure would look like. So you'd have like your normal app structure with all of your files in it, your HTML and JS and CSS, and then the main JS and package JSON are on the main. I guess they can be really wherever, but they're typically on the main level. And then on the left side is an example of the main JS file, and that browser window. The main window equals new browser window is where you're like instantiating that window that you want to put your web page in. Did I skip this one? Oh no, I went through this one. Okay, so yeah. So that was kind of all I had really for everyone. I just want to let everyone know about Electron because it's really cool.
Thank you. Duke. HDMI or USB-C?
You know, I got a USB. I don't have either.
Yeah.
Does this work?
It
might not work.
Oh, that's what I was. That was exactly what I was looking for.
It's okay. Unless somebody else wants to let me in the stream, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I can talk about it.
Yeah, just talk.
Yeah.
Use this one. Use this. Whatever's easier. Yeah, I'll flip it. Where's that?
Whoa.
There you go.
Okay. That's Sarah.
And
Where's Dave? Where's Dave who just spoke?
Are you thinking Doug?
Doug.
Doug had to take off.
Dave Whitney. Was that Doug?
Doug Whitney.
Doug Whitney. Sorry, Doug. That stinks. Okay, so this is like having an opinion or don't. We're building an Electron app. One of the reasons we are is because we want the data local. We're building a picture app. It's called Pixate. The reason we want the data local is because it's fast. And then if there's a zombie apocalypse, we don't have to, or a Carrington event or whatever. We have the data fast. So we own the memory. So that's the opinion here, is that by owning the memory, we have possession, which is kind of like 9/10 of the law. Not only does it act faster, but we have actual ownership of the assets. And so we can program that. So we're looking for root controls to build applications on, like Electron. So that's the opinion. And that's basically it. There's a couple ways we've done it. One is with Node as a server, where we serve ourselves. And another is an Electron. Okay, so we have that. Scuttlebutt is a social network, which is really interesting. You can look it up, scuttlebutt.nz. But what is really cool, and I hope that we can do here in Colorado, is like there's this place in Switzerland named CERN, where they invented the internet, right? Okay, so what he did is he made this sort of streamlined protocol that worked for everybody. There's a new guy out of, his name is Van Jacobson, and he's got this thing. If you're going to look up one thing, I'll write it down. Named data networking. It's so huge. It's so awesome. It doesn't exist yet. Named data networking. Look it up. It's really, really neat. Nobody knows about it. It's a security protocol. It builds trust from the security, from the protocol layer. All it does is secure the data with cryptography, signatures. Once you have the signed data, you don't have to trust the path to communicate. because you have secure data. What that does is undercuts everything, all of our security paradigm, everything. It's very, very, very neat. That's all I have to say. Go check it out.
Thank you, dude.
Yeah.
Danny. Glad to finally have you up here.
Thanks.
All right. Don't worry, everybody's watching.
All right, yeah, HTML. All right, so I'm Danny Radin. I work for Crown Peak as well, and I'll be talking about persisting state with Redux. So this is actually my only slide. So to kind of show this off, I'm going to be using this little app that I'm building with Code for Denver. You don't really need to worry about what it does. Just know that basically you're going to search for an address, and when you select an address, it's going to store that address in the state tree, the Redux state tree, under initial search. So, and then this page is going to display something based on what's in that initial search. But the problem is that if you were currently to refresh this page, you lose everything, because when you refresh the page, the Redux state just goes back to its default state. So in order to persist the state, what you'll do is you're going to make a little file called myLocalStorage, and make a couple of functions in here. One to save the state, and one to load the state. So you're going to pass the state through, and you're going to try to serialize that state, or stringify that state. And then, so in the browser, there's a built-in object called local storage. So you're going to set that serialized state to a specific key in there. And when loading the state, you're just going to do the opposite, basically. So the question is, where do you actually do the saving and loading of the state? So in the index.js, the main index.js is where you're actually configuring that store. So what you'll do is you're going to set up a subscriber for the store. It's actually built into the store object. And then you're going to pull that save state function and just pass in what you want to save. So we're only worried with the initial state key here. And then we're going to call store.getState .initial search. So it's going to pass that in and save it. So pretty much whenever the store changes, it's going to be saving the initial search to the local storage. And then you're going to load that inside the actual configure store. So here, this is where you're configuring the store. When you actually do the create store, you're going to pass in the persisted state as well. And it'll overwrite whatever was the initial state for the initial searches. So now that we have that all in there, let's try this again. So let's try that. And then we refresh. And it's all still there.
Thank you.
Oh, no.
Literally a mic drop.
Point.
I had to call it.
It's a very strong clip.
Thank you. David. Oh, you're doing it professional.
Yeah.
That's why you're there.
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me? No? Yeah? Actually, hold on. I'm going to do it with the speaker notes. Did that not work? Dang. Alright. Or I won't do it with the speaker notes.
You got this.
Yeah.
You know what to say.
I don't know why, but when I went to full screen, it just kept going black over there. Or that.
Give it a wiggle.
It was doing that a little bit with Michael's too.
That would make sense then.
Just don't touch your laptop.
Yeah, right. All right. Oh God. Right. All of the things. Okay. Let's just do that. And then I'm going to pull up my notes on my phone real quick. Cool. So I decided to do a talk on whether to dive deep or like whether to go wide or go deep when it comes to like where to put our, where to invest our time in our careers. So who am I and why am I here? So my name is David Shibley. I'm here speaking to you as somebody who accidentally went way too wide, way too fast. So I've always kind of been that way, where I've always been intrigued by a lot of things, and I move on to the next thing really quickly. And I thought that as somebody new to tech and as a programmer, that by acquiring as many of these skills as possible, that I'd be setting myself up for future success. I later found out that that's not entirely true. I just give you a little bit of example of like referential knowledge. I went to Galvanize, also bad word, right? And then while there, I probably dealt with 30 plus different like technologies and things that were new skills that I never acquired before. I started trying to list them off, and I just gave up. And then I start my next job, and then again, like another 30 plus technologies come along that I've never seen or like dealt with before, and I'm trying to learn. And I'm like, I'm staying in this place where I want to just keep staying as unfamiliar as possible. If it's something I've never done before, yeah, let's go do it. I wanted to be a junior forever is what I thought. It's true. And so I'll just pass over this real quick. So I'm basically going off of my own personal opinion. So reference back to Doug's talk. Like, this is just an opinion and out of my own anecdotal experiences. So my first recommendation, if you're wanting to grow, so if you start off in this place where you don't really know what you want to do, start with more fertile soil. So like actually create an intention, set like tangible goals for yourself of things that you want to learn. So have like a routine or some set time where you do this. Identify your interruptions, figure out what are the things that distract you and kind of eliminate those. Create a space where when you go to that space, you're actually dedicating yourself to like true learning. And then once you do decide to start growing, there we go. When you do decide to start growing, the things to consider is like, well, should I be specializing or should I be generalizing? Where should I be trying to consume a lot of different types of topics, or should I really get really good at like say React or something, right? Things to consider would be like, why to specialize? So the reason we would want to specialize is obviously as a specialist, you have more specialized knowledge, and so like you're kind of worth more, right? And so people who know the things that not a lot of people know, they become worth the most. You can also kind of distinguish yourself amongst your peers and in your community as being a specialist. And you get to start solving more higher level problems. So as you start to understand the technology that you're working with, you're able to then use it in ways you never would have been able to before until you got that specialization. The reasons not to over-specialize would be, so for instance, I said like the rewards are larger if you specialize, right? Like so you can get paid more money or something, but like the rewards are also limited as far as like where you can get those rewards from. So I put together this beautiful artistic drawing for you guys. And so if you notice, you have big giant stalks of corn, and they can create big giant ears of corn. But the amount of ears of corn that you can create, not that many, right? Versus if you are trying to spread yourself thin, you're putting all of your resources into a whole bunch of different places that you're trying to learn. Yeah, you can grow a whole lot of stalks of corn, but like how much corn are you really growing, and does anybody even want that corn? So, what does balance look like? That's what balance looks like. So what does balance look like? Balance looks like how would I say it? Balance is when you are intelligently identifying where to put your resources, and you can do that based off of things like staying involved in your community and paying attention to trends in technology. It means having, it means following different types of passions, and so follow all of your passions kind of thing. And as you identify certain areas where those passions are able to be maybe taken advantage of so like say you have a trend that's gonna boom and you know that you're really into machine learning or something, like everybody is nowadays. But like say you're really into machine learning and you saw that that was coming, and like now that place where you've kind of grown a little bit of your passion, which was just like a little bit of a hobby and you're doing it for funsies, all of a sudden it's something you can make money off of. And then start investing more time into that and then take advantage of that. So and then I was just gonna leave you with a quote that I thought was kind of ironic. So there so in regards to like just like handling limited resources or scarcity, even investing money, everybody says like diversify, which is kind of like what I was going for. And so I was going to take a Warren Buffett quote that I read one time, which is that diversification is protection against ignorance, which I thought was like really applicable to like what we were talking about here. And then the rest of the quote is actually, it makes little sense for those who know what they're actually doing. So it kind of goes against what I'm saying, but anyways, that's all I have. I'll share it with you.
Okay. Nice shot.
Thanks.
And do we have any speakers that rolled in late? Awesome. Have you up after Chris? Let's put that as high as you can get it. You want to flip it?
What's up, y'all? All right, my name is Chris. I'm going to talk a little bit about Prettier. Who's heard of Prettier? All right, good. I got some of you, or you're not listening. I work at Formidable along with Sarah. We're the two Formidables here in Denver, and most of the rest of us are in Seattle. So Prettier fits into a category of automatic code formatters. This isn't something new to JavaScript, but Prettier is probably the most popular instance of it in JavaScript. And what it can do for you is that it will take your code and essentially format it for you, make all of the formatting decisions. Even the ones you've already made, it will redo those for you. So you can see here we have a really long, ugly React component, and then it will take everything, put it on its own line, change the all of the strings to be double quotes, make all of those tiny decisions for you. And it's doing that by using in between it's using an abstract syntax tree. So it's taking what your code means, boiling it down to that, and then it's printing what that meaning should look like. And should, of course, is an opinionated word here. So it's doing everything from like line lengths to spacing, even the spacing inside of the JSX. And you can do this inside of your code editor. There's a number of different plugins. It's also a command line tool, so you can do it on every commit to your code base, for example. You could run all your code through Prettier. So honestly, the TLDR is you should really do this. It's really easy. I'll try to convince you later. It will make you more effective, I promise you this, and it might even help you like coding a little bit more. I'll try to convince you of that as well. But why should you believe me? I'm honestly pretty pessimistic and pretty grumpy. I'm never going to be up here showing you the newest technology just for the newest technology's sake. That's really fun. It's fun to try new things, but I think usually it's honestly a waste of time unless you dive deep enough to actually understand why people use it. But this Prettier's convinced me to the point where I'm using it on all my personal projects, and we use it pretty heavily at Formidable, especially the projects I'm on right now. So why is it awesome? So this is the biggest point, is that there are fewer petty decisions to be made, and fewer petty discussions. And I don't know who's had like PRs that just take forever. Yes, because someone's like, well, I think you should take those chain methods and each one should be on its own line. You know, so dot map, dot reduce. And someone says, well, they're really short, it should just be on one line. Don't have that conversation. That's not helpful. What you should be having is like, what are the data structures you're using? How are you manipulating those data structures? Those are the interesting conversations to have, not how your code is styled. So I think less choice is very good, and I feel pretty strongly about that. Give yourself less choices. It makes your code reviewers faster. It creates a consistent and easy to read code base. It looks like one person wrote it because basically one person did. Prettier wrote all of your code. You wrote the idea in JavaScript. It took that idea and then it reformatted it all. And so your code reads pretty well. It also makes your code clearer, the meaning of it clearer. And I'll have an example of this later. Not just clear as in all the strings or double quotes, but it can actually increase the syntactic clarity. A couple more things. It makes structural refactors really easy. Like let's say you need to make an inline method, an inline arrow method, a full-fledged function. You can do that pretty easily with Prettier. Even if all of your line spacing's off, you just save it, and Prettier will take care of the rest for you. It enables, I think this is one of the most powerful things, it enables a higher level thinking. And so no longer are you thinking about every little space and all the details of your code. You're thinking on the idea level. Of course, it needs to be correct, but there are many, many different ways to deliver the same message to JavaScript. And Prettier will take care of what that code should look like. So here's an example of JSX reformatting. And what I want you to pay attention to here is right here we have a space in between a link and the word before it. And when Prettier formats that, it'll make sure it keeps that space. It's taking care of all of that stuff for you so that you don't have to worry about it. It's doing things like, here's an example of making your code cleaner. We have ands and ors. And I can never remember which comes first. But when you save it in Prettier, it'll put it on the brackets and say, here's exactly what's happening. The and is evaluating before the or in between them. And here's an example of a refactor. I'm going to take all of this code inside of theme. I'm going to pull it out into its own method. But I'm going to be really sloppy and just dump it into a method. And when I save it, Prettier can take care of that. So really, this is just like copy and paste coding. I don't need to worry about what's going on. It's going to move everything around. And I think that's one of the examples that it frees you up a little bit. You feel a little more bold in going after some refactorings that should be done because you don't have to worry about all the tiny details. I feel pretty strongly that this is better than lint. Lint is a passive tool. So what linting can do is it can give you a to-do list of all the things that you need to change in your code. But what auto-formatting like Prettier does is say, here's what I've done for you. I changed all of this for you. You don't have to do a thing. It's good to note that for non-style issues, you're still going to want linting. And so this is what I would call code quality issues. Like you don't want console statements all over your code. You should have a linter that tells you to remove those. You should have max complexity for your functions. So you don't have these giant ugly functions. So you're still going to need lint for some things, but it probably gets rid of 80% of your linting rules. Just a few notes. I have to say this is not new to JavaScript. It's easy if you are specializing in JavaScript to forget about the rest of the software development world. But if you want to get new ideas, sometimes you should go out and look at different places. So Reason, Elm, and Go are 3 languages that have very good auto-formatters. And I think Prettier was based on especially the Reason formatter. One of the reasons I really like Elm is because as a language, it prevents you from making a lot of mistakes. But combined with an auto-formatter, it really enables you to think on this higher level and you don't have to get into the details. Also, Prettier works on not just JavaScript, but also works on your CSS, on JSON, Markdown, a number of different things. You saw it was working on JSX as well. Cool. So if you decide to do this, hopefully I convinced you to do it. I'd prefer you did it right. So if you use Prettier, make sure you do it strict. Don't allow any variation. Our Prettier config file, you can configure all the rules. Ours consists of 1 rule, and that's how long the line should be. Everything else, just take it by default. Make sure it's enforced. Don't let people comment it out. I don't think there's a single, I think we have maybe 20,000 lines of JavaScript in our current code base, and I don't think there's any Prettier exceptions. You don't really need them. You're arguing about the wrong thing if you're trying to make an exception there. And make sure it's automatic. Just have everybody configure in their code editors and make sure it's done in CI in the linting process. And then you can see if anybody tried to cheat. Thank you so much. You can check out Prettier here, and you can follow my dumb jokes on Twitter here. Cheers.
Here we have one more. Yes.
The traffic was so bad, Margaret.
Margaret.
Yes.
Oh no, I can't blame you for traffic.
I've like never done this commute before in the spring.
Oh, you came up from the scratch. Thank you. There it goes.
Ah, don't look at anything. Close your eyes. I want everyone to know I've exercised very good willpower by, even though being late, not coming and getting pizza in the middle of someone's talk. My name is Margaret James. I'm a front-end developer. Just moved here 4 days ago from Louisville, Kentucky. And I'm doing React primarily for my company, which is a travel booking engine. But I wanted to talk to you guys today about Vim. Raise your hand if you love your text editor. Put your hands down if, no, keep them up. Put your hands down if you're not on Vim and you love your text editor. Cool, awesome. I'm so sorry for everything I'm about to say. But I feel like this is a good theme for the fact we've talked about opinionated, we've talked about, this is a very old technology, well VI, which is what Vim is based off of, is like 30 plus years old. But it was honestly like learning Vim, and it is a steep learning curve, was probably I think it improved me as a programmer in the way I think, in the way that I operate. So I kind of want to talk to you guys about, like, not how to implement it, but like why. Why someone might want to do this very ridiculous thing. Has anyone heard other people talk insufferably about Vim and how great it is? Okay, cool. So that happened to me, the senior developer I was working with, like every day, he was like, you should just do Vim, you should. And I was like, shut up, I'm fine. My Sublime was excellent. I had all the plugins, like it was like top notch. And he's like, you type too much. And I was like, what? I'm typing code. That's what we're all doing here. So here are the things I knew about Vim before I became like one of the zealots of it. I'm so sorry. It's a CLI-based editor as opposed to a GUI. It's already on your computer or a server, pretty much on everything. It comes default or is easily installed. It is mouse-free by design. I know that some editors you can do key shortcuts, and that's fine. You don't have to touch your mouse, but this one is made for that purpose. Very steep learning curve, and then people who use it won't stop talking about how great it is. So why are these people talking about it? To me, the person who was espousing it to me just said it would make you faster, and that's not really, I think, the best thing about it, although it is a thing about it. Okay, so, oh, I'm missing a slide.
Give the HTML a little wiggle too.
Oh, okay. Is there water? Sorry. So this was supposed to say one of the reasons that people like it is it's faster. Because if you don't know about it, it's there are key bindings. So basically, a single letter on your keyboard when you're not in insert mode stands for a thing. D is delete, C is change, etc., etc. This. Sorry, I left my water at home. It's actually more about flow. So achieving a state where there's no latency between what you're thinking and what you're coding. I had the definition of flow up here because I wasn't going to remember it, but it's basically when you lose track of time and space and you're like achieving optimal everything, you feel it. Okay, all right. One of the things that everyone does the most as a coder, is reading. So I've never had dry mouth before, and I just moved to Colorado. I haven't even smoked weed. I'm a bourbon person, so I'm also very nervous. Come talk to me about bourbon. We can drink bourbon. So reading, thank you so much. That was amazing. this, basically, my personal opinion is the mouse was slowing me down without me realizing it. When you are able to code in a way that is intuitive, and a lot of that is reading code, it becomes, the latency between your thoughts and what you're writing or reading is very swift. So people talk about why people are crazy about Vim is it keeps you in this mode because you can chain these very simple things together. So in 1 to 3 keystrokes, here's some of the things you can go to do in Vim. So it's not scrolling, but you're scrolling in a more precise way. Because I know like in Atom and some other things you can say like delete to end of line or delete to end of word, but Vim allows you to say, basically you can chain, I think that's my next slide. Yes. The language of Vim allows you to chain these things together. So you're not just saying delete, you're like delete what? If you DD, delete whole line. But you can also delete to the start of the next word, to the end of the current word. You can delete previous, you can delete regexes. These are very simple, chainable commands. And I think there's a lot of power in that. And honestly, I think people don't really talk, at least not the people who talk to me about Vim, they weren't talking about this. They were just like, look how few keys I type. And it, cool, yeah, for sure. I'm gonna show you like a macro that I wrote, and I'm like, look, it's like so few keys. But that's, I mean, it's something to really think about if you want to spend some time studying a thing. It is an iterative process to learn it. It doesn't come easily, but it pays off much like when you first learned to blind type. You know, nobody had a good time. You like wanted to peek. Now we all do it, and it's great, and you can't imagine going back to the hunting and pecking. So it's like that. Power through composition. One of the coolest things about Vim that honestly was the final thing that like persuaded me to do it was like watching, whoops. Oh no. Okay. The senior developer I worked with do a macro. I was like, that's amazing. But even as simple as if you just do a dot in normal mode in Vim, it will repeat your last action. So if you said like, I want to delete this root URL on this line and maybe like create another one, if you hop down to another line, just press dot, it executes that same thing again. You have a registry, which is basically blank spaces of memory, like a clipboard, and you can assign different clips to a different registry. So it comes in really handy when you're wanting to do, you know, multiple, like you want to copy one piece of text and then manipulate it and paste it. So, what? My macro is not here. I like wrote this macro today. I was like, this looks so cool because it's like literally like QW like exclamation. It's a lot of, it looks like nonsense. It looks like my cat jumped on the keyboard. And what it had done was pretty cool. So I needed to do a conditional, basically there's a URL and the client wanted it to be one URL if it was in UAT and one different URL base if it's in prod, but you still had the rest of the URL. So I wrote a macro that basically took that, created the script around each conditional. So it was like prod here, UAT here, and then changed the base text and executed it like it was like 135 times in the file. Like I could have manually done all of that. And it did take a while to compose the macro, but it's like a special feeling of superiority when you're like, the automated thing I did may have taken longer than doing it manually, but I know that there's not any typos in it. Like it executed, it was fine. So if you're curious and you want to be miserable for a while, but then highly enjoy your life and tell everybody else how much better you are. No. But it is honestly, it's a feeling in your heart. Using Vim is a feeling in your heart. And then I guess that's the long and short of it. It is fun. It makes it more fun to use your editor. So Vim Tutor it comes as a CLI tool that you can just. It looks very old. It looks like an 80s video game. Then there's a little Zelda-like video game here that's called Vim Adventures, and it teaches you about like how to navigate. And what I used personally was this keyboard thing. It's like each week it shows you some more keys you can learn. So at first you're just doing basic navigation and you're like, this is so dumb. And then you're like, ooh, I can like jump up 6 lines now, like 2 key presses, that's cool. But we're at a React meetup. It took me a while to, let's be honest, I didn't write this Vim RC. I edited it from somebody who knew what they were doing. And I took out the things I didn't like, and that's because Vim is awful to configure yourself. It is not something you ever want to use vanilla out of the box. So anyway, if you can go to @reparte, that's my handle for pretty much everything. It's on GitHub and Slack. If you want to just take somebody's who's already set up and not have to worry about JSX formatting, and I have some, ooh, that is so small. Okay, well, this is Vim, so you can have it not just look like white text and stuff. I've not yet put prettier on it, but that is a good reminder to do that. And then that was a script. Anyway, so it doesn't have to be awful. Your life doesn't have to be ugly and terrible just because you're using a CLI-based editor. So I think that's everything.
I'll take that one. Is there anyone else? Cool. Let me do a quick close and we'll get going. Okay, one last big thank you to our sponsors, really from all year, but Turing, Galvanize, CA, Crown Peak. Thank you tonight, Apex Systems, for everything. We need some help. So next month, we're going to do some stuff with a logo. And right now, we've got this thing we drew on a napkin earlier today at lunch with Will and Sam. And
it's really good.
It's really good, yeah. But we wanted to give you guys an opportunity to contribute to what we've got going on. And what better way than to say, hey, we have a repo at github.com/reactdenver called, what is it called?
Logo Help Wanted.
Logo Help Wanted. And it's accepting pull requests. And we're looking for just a community contribution there. We'll give you credit and all that. Looking to have something that we can use for going forward. Quick thank you for everything in 2017. Thank you to all the speakers tonight. I learned a bunch of things. Thank you to all the speakers this year. Thank you to all our sponsors. Thank you to Turing for hosting. Thank you to Will Beard, Sam Lindstrom, and I guess myself for hosting and organizing. It's like a part-time job. We met over lunch today to figure out how we can make this meetup better, and we have these conversations every other day to figure out how do we do this in a way that's even better each month. We're doing the best we can. So we also welcome any help. We've had help from several volunteers, and we always encourage that and always welcome that. Thank you to all of you for coming. This is an amazing meetup. It's amazing just what I've learned from each of you, from talks, from conversations afterwards, all of that. Thank you for coming every single month. And for 2018, we've got some big things planned. The first thing is we're going to have a website. So the first thing we'll do that logo is put it on our website, where we want to put up all of our talks, everything about the meetup and how to attend, how to contribute, how to help out, just to kind of level that up. Because we have a lot going on with this live stream. We have this camera every month for the past few months, and we're broadcasting this to the world. There's a lot of people that either don't have a meetup local to them that they can attend, or they have reasons that they need to stay home and they're just down the street. So I'm really happy that we're able to put this online. Everything goes on YouTube, so we're able to share this with the world. We want to do the best we can to make that even better, so we're working on that. We're hoping to have new speakers. I think we had a ton of new speakers this year that were either new to the meetup or new to speaking in general, and we're really, really happy about that. I love just hearing from new people, getting new ideas, new thoughts, and that's worked out really well. So I want to encourage a lot more people to step to the fore and to give it a shot. So that's really it. In a few minutes, we'll head over to Public School 303. Like I said, it's down 16th Street, past Union Station, across Wewata on the right. So I hope you'll join us there, and thank you for coming.